Nirodhamanutpadamanuच्छedamashashvatam Anekarthamananarthamanagamanirgamam Yah pratitya samutpadam prapanchopashamam shivam Deshayamasa sambuddhastam vande vatatam varam Jnanena kashakalpena dharmanyo gaganopaman Deshayamasa sambuddhastam vande dvipadam varam Nasvato napi parato nadvabhyam napyahetutah Utpanna jatu vidyante bhavah kvachana kechana. Welcome back to our Dharmapada session. It is wonderful that all of you are using your time so meaningfully in this difficult period which the world is going through. The subject of all of Buddha's teachings is always mindfulness. This is, of course, an English term that perhaps is not so well translated. So I want to, before I go into the verses again, for a moment dwell on this term. There are two words the Buddha uses for this term. One is appamada. In Sanskrit, this would be apramada. And the other one is sati, which in Sanskrit would be smriti. Now, those of you who have a background in Indic languages, whose mother tongues might be Hindi or Gujarati or Punjabi or another Indian language, you might think, but hold on a moment, smriti means memory. And that's also true to an extent. But the primary meaning of smriti is in fact to be attentive, moment to moment. Therefore, memory. To have a good memory, remembrance, constant remembrance of what is occurring. But I generally feel we should not translate the term, rather we should explain what it means. Sati or smriti means moment to moment awareness of what is occurring. It is not the case that ordinary people who have no experience with meditation are simply aware moment to moment. It's just not true. It is not the case that unless someone has practiced for a long time, that they are simply always aware. It's just not true. You see, awareness and simply being conscious, like any animal is conscious, is not the same thing. You can go through your day very basically conscious. Sort of, there is a pen here and I'm doing something, and then you take your phone and you're reading something, or you're watching Netflix, you're talking with somebody, but that is not the awareness we're talking about. The awareness or sati the Buddha speaks about is an attentiveness towards the present moment, where you are fully aware that I am speaking now, the strange red man from Switzerland, that I am teaching you something, that you are sitting in your homes. Whatever is occurring inside you as emotions or simply sense experiences, the flow of your mind. A total awareness of this. like the sky, fully embracing the clouds. This kind of awareness or sati embraces all the experiences that are occurring moment for moment. And this has to be practiced, my dears. And there is a fruit, a phala in Sanskrit or Pali, when we practice like this. Moment to moment sati produces clarity, produces sukha, bliss, produces the absence of troubles. That is the Buddha's promise. In the Satipatthana Sutra, the sutra on the foundations of sati, he teaches that even a week of full sati, full attentiveness towards the present moment, releases us from basic troubles, basic suffering. So my dears, please don't think that you just have that. No, you don't. You have to practice that. Where you say, all right, let me practice the way the Buddha taught sati. And how did he teach sati? I want to show you the first part of the way one practices a prostration with sati, with awareness or mindfulness. This is just the first part, and the next time we will do the second part. So, it's a little difficult to show here with the camera. You pay attention as you are seated and ready to prostrate to the Buddha. You pay attention to your body and how your hand, your right hand, is slowly rising to the level of your heart. So once more, you pay slow attention, total attention to how the right hand is rising to your heart. And then the same with the left hand. Rising. And then as the hands come together, you pay attention to the touching. You understand? This is called sati. Absolute awareness of the present moment. And the next time I will teach you the next part. So please remember this. As the hand is rising, you pay attention to that totally. Slowly rising. Then the other hand rising. And then as they touch, you pay attention to the touching. That is sati. And to practice like this brings great blessings, great happiness, great relaxation. Today I hope to finish the second chapter. So you see, we're actually going somewhere. In the remaining verses of the second chapter, the Buddha compares the power of mindfulness with in the form of 4 examples. The first is a palace of wisdom upon a lofty mountain. The second is a swift horse that is faster than all other horses. The third is Indra, the king of the gods. And the fourth is Agni, the all-consuming fire. Pamadam appamadena yada nudati pandito panya pasadamaruhya asoko sokinim pajam pabbatattho va bhumathe dhiro bale avekhati. When a wise person removes negligence through mindfulness and ascends to the palace of wisdom, released from troubles, full of insight, he or she surveys the suffering masses like someone standing on a mountain peak, observing the children upon the ground below. When a wise person removes negligence through mindfulness and ascends to the palace of wisdom, released from troubles, full of insight, he or she surveys the suffering masses like someone standing on a mountain peak, observing the children upon the ground below. When we are practitioners of mindfulness, sati, let us call it sati. When we are practitioners of such attentiveness, moment to moment to moment to moment to moment, always fully aware of the present and how everything arises and ceases in the present, we become filled with care for the suffering of others, even though we ourselves are like upon a mountain in a palace of wisdom. We are keenly attentive to the suffering of others, and we know that they cannot just come out of their suffering by themselves. Of course, some can, but where we can see that people cannot come out of their suffering by themselves, we have to understand that they are like children. A child cannot just manage everything by themselves. So we become attentive to that, and we care for others, and we try to help wherever we can. A practitioner of mindfulness never becomes more selfish, rather always becomes more attentive towards others, more caring, always has the thought, how can I be useful? How can I help? And the Buddha too, in his life, was all the time trying to help. However, he also warned of trying to help when we ourselves have not yet fully understood the power of mindfulness. When we are ourselves led by emotions, we should be a little careful. So there is a disclaimer, and there's a story that brings attention to this, told by Buddhaghoṣa, that once the Buddha was staying at the Jetavana monastery, and he observed Mahakashyapa, who was one of his students, who was practicing meditation on the image of light. This is called āloka kritsna. It is a particular practice where one sees certain lights during meditation and one concentrates on these again and again and again. And Mahākāśyapa was trying to use his clairvoyant ability, which arose with this, to understand the needs of people around him. And he saw that some people would be well off when they die and others wouldn't be so well off. So Mahākāśyapa started making it a habit of telling people around him, you're going to be bad. I mean, the state when you die is going to be bad. And you're going to be well off. I can see it. So when I read this, it reminds me a little bit of, there are these people on television who channel the spirits of the dead. I'm sure you've heard about these. And maybe some of it is real, we don't know. But they know so much more than ordinary people. And they're sort of telling people information that is really life-changing if it is true. And the Buddha was critical here of Mahākāśyapa using his so-called intuition in telling people very powerful things. Imagine, this is like me telling one of you, supposing I take Neelam, and I say, you know me, Neelam, you're going to be really well off when you die. But Tusharji, you're going to be in a mess. That's really bad, right? That makes you feel bad, because who knows? Maybe I don't have that clairvoyance. It's maybe just a random thought that came to me. So what the Buddha, or it could be the opposite, right? Tusharji, don't worry, I'm joking. So what the Buddha is doing in this story is he's making people aware not to do this. Don't use your spiritual intuitions to tell people what you think about them. Because it's quite life-changing, especially if you respect someone. Mahākāśyapa was considered, a very good meditator. And then the Buddha was observing him going around and telling people his spiritual intuitions. So the story is an ancient reminder not to do that. If you're not really, really at the level of a Buddha, better don't do that. Otherwise, you might sort of give people questionable advice. Or do it with a disclaimer and do it with humility. Maybe say, well, Neelam, I think it would be very precious for you to practice mindful awareness of the present moment. And when you do that, there's nothing you ever have to worry. And Tusharji, the same. When you practice, when you connect with the divinity of your own consciousness, there's nothing you ever have to worry. Right? This is a very positive way of speaking, rather than like Mahākāśyapa was telling people, you're going to go there, you're going to go there. Right? So it's an ancient reminder. So the Buddha told him that, my son Kashyapa, the births and deaths of beings are not your concern. Very literally in the Pali. They are only the concern of the Buddhas. I think it's a statement for the ages. It's not your concern, my dear. I think these are excellent stories. If you're a scholar of these things and you see this, it's so great. That they had these issues in ancient times. To put it in modern language, they had the esoteric quacks. They also had them back then. Like we have them today. So the Buddha is warning them, telling them off. It's excellent. And then the next verse, Appamatto pamattesu suttesu bahujagaro abalassam vasighaso hitva yati sumedhaso. Mindful among those who are not mindful, fully awake among those who are asleep. the one of great wisdom is like a swift horse running ahead, leaving far behind all the other powerless horses. Mindful among those who are not mindful, fully awake among those who are asleep. The one of great wisdom is like a swift horse running ahead, leaving far behind all the other powerless horses. Now, the idea here is not that the practice of mindfulness is a horse race in Ascot, where you wear all the beautiful hats. But I think at the moment, it must be cancelled because of COVID. But after COVID is over, we could all meet for a mindfulness session at Ascot, and we could say the one with the best hat wins. So this is not a race. Mindfulness is not a race. And this example is not about the Buddha telling us there are those who are further ahead in this race. It is simply an encouragement that when you are surrounded by people who are not mindful, it doesn't mean that you should also not be mindful. It is in fact an encouragement that you have the power in you to always be mindful. That you can be a powerful horse that is swiftly running ahead. It is an encouragement, as the commentator says, to practice sati swiftly, not to let your mind droop and to go into states of brooding, which are very slow states, where the bad mood takes over and your mind becomes sluggish, very slow, and everything is so bad, and everything is so difficult. Don't go into such a state. Instantly activate the powerful horse of mindfulness that is always available to you. In the most difficult situation, it's available to you. You see? That is the point of this example here. The commentator also says that the thoughts are sluggish horses, but the mindfulness that you can give rise to is a powerful horse that runs ahead. So it's not necessarily outer people that are being described, but rather the inner horses, that you have all these slow horses in you, where you have these states that are trying to drag you down and all that. But amidst all those states, there is always available to you instant mindfulness. You can always bring your mind to the present. You can snap out of it, bring your mind to the present, and you can know that in this present awareness, there is always available to you instant clarity. You see, this is what the great teacher is trying to say. And there's a story again that there were two bhikshus, two monks in the Buddha's Jetavana Vihara. It was not really a monastery at that time. I mentioned this before. These were gardens, pleasure gardens, very beautiful gardens, like you have them in the UK, like St. James Park. As a child, I remember in St. James Park, there were these beautiful squirrels and birds, and you could go to St. James Park and they would come to you and they would sit on your shoulders and you could feed them. I don't know if this is still occurring now. And similarly, in ancient India, there were these beautiful viharas, beautiful garden-like parks, where monks and nuns were strolling around and they would practice their meditation under the trees, and it must have been so beautiful. And this is where the Buddha was residing with his monks and nuns. And there were two particular monks who had learnt about meditation, and they went to one of the little woods there, and one of them was just spending his time talking to other young monks and gossiping, and it was becoming night time already, and they hadn't practiced for one moment, and they were just idling their time away, and then went to sleep. Whereas another bhikshu, another monk, spent his first period, as I just described, practicing the mindful prostration very slowly. And then next time I will talk about the second part of that, don't worry. So slowly, I want to take you through the Buddha's practice. So he was practicing that. He spent the first part doing the mindful prostration and the slow walking, the walking meditation, which I will also teach you. And then the second part he spent in absolute silent meditation. And the Buddha knew about that. So he saw the difference between these two. And the bhikshu who had been negligent, of course, as is very common, was bragging about his knowledge of meditation. It's often the case that the ones who don't practice are the ones who brag. And the other one said to the Buddha that, I haven't fully understood the teaching. I am practicing, but I haven't fully understood it, O Master. Please teach me further. So this is where the Buddha said that, you see, there are those who are not fully mindful, but who simply brag. And then there are those who are truly mindful and who are on the path to insight. Because when we practice mindfulness, we become aware of our lack of understanding, you see. And then the Buddha said this verse, Appamadena maghava devanam setatam gato appamadam pasamsanti pamado garahito sada. That it was through mindfulness that Indra, the munificent, the generous, became the king of the gods, or the chief of the gods. Mindfulness is ever praised, whereas negligence is ever rebuked. Through mindfulness, Indra, the munificent or generous, became the king or chief of the gods. Mindfulness is ever praised, whereas negligence is ever rebuked. And he explained that Indra did not just become the king of the gods like that, but that in a previous life, when he was not king of the gods, he lived in a village called Machala, in the area of the Lichavis. Lichavis, this is where modern Nepal is. And that he had 32 companions, and they went about building wells and roads and hospitals and schools with tremendous respect and attention towards the needs of the people around them. And they paid great attention to their parents, respecting the elders. They were gentle of speech. They avoided backbiting, gossiping, and talking about things that shouldn't necessarily be talked about. They were not stingy, but very generous. They always spoke the truth. And they would always observe any irritation or anger arising in them and instantly dissolve it through mindfulness. And that it was because of this, the Buddha said, that this chap, when he died, became Indra, the king of the gods. So even the state of a god arises only through mindfulness. And of course, we can apply this to our own ordinary lives when we are ever aware, ever attentive, ever respectful, ever dissolving irritation, ever gentle in our speech, when we never backbite, never gossip, when we are always generous of heart, always speaking the truth. Don't you think you will shine in your life? Will not people with time respect you for your wonderful, noble nature when you are always like that? You will become a chief. You will become someone respected, an inspiring figure. So this is what the Buddha showed here, that even Indra only became Indra because of these qualities. Appamadarato bhikkhu pamade bhayadassiva samyojanam anumthulam daham aggiva gacchati. A renunciant immersed in mindfulness, who sees the danger in negligence, proceeds like Agni, the sacred fire, burning every bond, both small and large. A renunciant immersed in mindfulness, who sees the danger in negligence, proceeds like Agni, the sacred fire, burning every bond, both small and large. What ties the mind to the cycle of negative experiences are, in fact, the negative emotions and the consequences and actions they bring about. These are like endless bonds or chains. You see, this is where we really need to understand the teaching. When you have a negative emotion, the modern sort of Western model of psychology is to say that this negative emotion you're having now is the consequence of previous experiences. And yes, there is some truth to that. But the Buddha's teaching is that this negative emotion you have now is in fact the bond which is going to cause the negative consequences. Do you understand that? That when you have a negative emotion now, that is when you have to apply mindfulness. And not think, poor little me, I am the victim of the past. Because by thinking I am the victim of the past, you are actually strengthening your negative emotion. If you have understood that mindfulness, instant awareness of the present, is the antidote towards your current negative emotion. Because through awareness of the present, again and again bringing the mind to the present, instantly, you see, very fast, a swift horse, he said. Mindfulness is a swift horse. By instantly bringing the mind to the present again and again, that negative emotion is going to recede. It's very important to understand this. And you can only know when you practice it. It really recedes. This is the point here. That when the mind is instantly brought to the present awareness, the negative emotions cannot stay for long. They just can't. Please understand this. And then you will realize that negligence, which in the Buddha's understanding means the mind roaming in the past or projecting into the future, that this is actually a great danger. Me too. Whenever I feel some discomfort, physical or emotional or mental, I instantly practice this. Instantly. I don't let the mind go into a rabbit hole, 15, 20 seconds of gloomy, and then it goes into minutes of gloominess, and that turns into hours and hours. You see, that is the error, my dears. If you instantly, when the negative emotions start, they start coming up in you, it's like that, right? They start, you can really know. Oh, here they come, here they come. When you instantly apply the mindfulness, when you instantly bring the mind to the actual present, that is the solution, my dears. And then the Buddha says, it is like Agni, it is like fire burning the bonds, small and large. This awareness of the present is like fire. Nothing but this awareness of the present burns all the negative bonds. It really does. All right? It's a blazing fire. And here there's a story that there was a bhikshu and he learned meditation from the Buddha. Bhikshu means a monk or a renunciant. And he was trying a little bit and wasn't quite working out for him so well. And you see, that shows us also in the past, it didn't just always work. It required practice. And then he became depressed and frustrated. And he thought that I need more instructions from the Buddha. So he set out towards the Jetavana Vihara, this park. But on the way there, he saw that there was something was burning, a blazing fire. And he ran up the top of a hill. And from up there, he was observing the fire. And the fire was consuming an area of the forest. And as the fire spread, it suddenly occurred to him that just as that fire was burning up everything, even so, the awareness of the present, of the now, is like a fire that burns up the bonds. So when he reached the Jetavana garden, the Buddha, who of course was aware of the bhikshu's insight, spoke this verse, This is the tradition. And then he told him that, my child, my son, you are on the right path. Keep it up. All bonds are burnt through the fire of awareness. Krishna also says, Jnanagni sarva karmani bhasmasat kurute tatha, that the fire of awareness or insight, jnana, realization, burns up all karmas, all cause and effect. And then the last verse of the chapter, second chapter already finished. Appamadarato bhikkhu pamade bhayadassiva abhabbo parihanaya nibbana seva santike. A renunciant immersed in mindfulness, who sees the danger in negligence, is unable to fall back and abides in the very presence of nirvana. A renunciant immersed in mindfulness, who sees the danger in negligence, is unable to fall back and abides in the very presence of nirvana. This moment-to-moment awareness of the present, which is available to you right now, is the presence of nirvana. Because the deeper you will practice this, the more it will free you of your bonds. First, you might just taste it a little, just a little bit. You might sense, yes, there's some truth that when I'm in the present with my awareness, then there is some lightness. Yes, then I realize that a lot of my troubles are actually just thoughts, and a lot of my emotions resolve themselves through that. Initially, you might just taste it a little bit, a tiny little bit. And then you will fall back into strong emotions and into difficult patterns and all that. But the deeper you practice, the more you realize that this very awareness of the present carries in itself the seed of nirvana, the seed of liberation, because it begins to grow and grow and grow and grow. And then, at some point, when those little negative things arise, you can instantly recognize them. It is like micro-awareness. Instantly know them. Instantly. So you have to train your mind to become so aware, so skilled, that you can recognize a negative emotion at the very instant of its arising. Not after 10 seconds. 10 seconds of a negative emotion, my dears, is too long. 10 seconds is already, that's already, there used to be a fun park in the UK called Thorpe Park. I don't know if it still exists. And there are similar fun parks in Europe. Of course, Britain is also part of Europe, but in Switzerland and in Germany and all that, we also have these parks. And there are these roller coasters. And there is one in Europe, in Germany, it's called the Europa Park. You have to go there once. It's amazing. And it's called the Silver Star, built by Mercedes-Benz. So you go up there, it's so high. You go up there slowly. It pulls you up slowly. And then there is this peak moment. And after that, the roller coaster goes down with full speed, almost straight down, 70 meters down. So you see, my dears, when you reach that peak, it takes about 5 to 10 seconds for the silver star to go down, to rush down into the depth. Those 5 to 10 seconds are exactly like the 5 to 10 seconds you have when a negative emotion arises in you. If you can recognize with full mindfulness the negative emotion before it turns into a roller coaster, you will actually resolve the negative emotion. Please understand this. But you need to practice and train your mind that it doesn't go into the downward phase. Yes? So, this was the second chapter. I'm very happy. I don't think the Dharmapada is being taught these days, except in some monasteries. I haven't seen anyone teaching it online. So this is commendable. It was at Neelam's request. It is wonderful that we are sharing this with you. And I'm sure you have some benefit. Now, someone asks, I hear in religious books that Indra was always cunning and crafty. So I wonder whether he practiced meditation. You see, this is a different Indra. The Indra you hear about in the Puranas is not the same Indra that Buddha talked about. It's a different Indra. Indra is a position, and you can be born into that position. So yes, there was an Indra who was sort of a troublemaker. You're right. But the Indra Buddha talked about is a very divine, saintly deity. Do you have any other questions? What should we do with the emotion when we recognize it? Someone asks. So, essentially, nothing at all. Can you manage to do that? Can you recognize, but then do nothing at all? Totally bring the mind to the awareness of the present, recognize and do nothing at all. Just recognize. But in the present, my dears, you see, this is what sometimes everyone misses. People think that, all right, the present moment. Okay, the red man said it, the present moment. Fine. So for a moment, people bring it into the present moment, but then the mind starts ruminating and going down the rabbit hole. But that's not the present moment. You understand? The present moment is the present moment. So, awareness of the present moment means to bring the mind back to the present moment and to recognize the emotion from the palace of the present moment. Very important. Not going into a roller coaster and then trying to recognize the mind in the roller coaster. That's not going to work. Present is the palace, all right? There's a beautiful book. It's quite old already, but I came across this some time ago by Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now. I don't know if you've heard about this. It's exactly the same teaching, only he's sort of unpacked it in more modern terms. Very useful book if you want to understand the Buddha's teaching, The Power of Now. Then someone says, how can we instantly pacify a restless mind? Well, there is a yogic method, and you all know it already because you practice these sessions. It is really this powerful breathing called Udghata. This is from the Kashmiri tradition, the Ati Yoga tradition, Tibetan Kashmiri tradition. And you all know it. You recognize the restlessness, but then You take a deep breath and you exhale forcefully. And one more, and you exhale forcefully. And one more, and you exhale forcefully. And then you rest in the awareness of the present, as the Buddha taught. And that really helps. And if the mind is still restless, just repeat it. Okay? Repeat it till the mind is less restless. And if that doesn't work, the supreme method, I'm joking now, the supreme method of all the yogis of all the 3 times is go for a walk. Sometimes going for a walk is greater than all the methods of yoga of all the 3 times, really. Just go for a walk. Go for some fresh air. It sometimes helps more than everything else, really. And of course, keep the awareness active when you walk. Keep the sati active. Observe the trees, observe your senses as they experience the fresh air, and so on. Last question. If someone is on medication to help with anxiety, what is the best introduction to the practice of sati? It makes no difference. Whether you take medication or not, you can still be aware of the present. Makes no difference. It's the same instruction. Just be aware of the present. Full awareness of the present. And if the mind is wandering away, again, bring it to the present. Very simple instruction. And it releases us slowly from the knots. So, my dears, all the best to you. Remember sati, the teaching of the Lord Buddha, and wishing you a wonderful weekend. See you in 2 weeks.